Welcome back to Jim's Jeeps. Today we're going to be replacing the ball joints on the 1989 YJ. I'll show you how it's done. It's not that big a deal, but you do need a few special tools, and I'll show you how they're used. Thanks for joining us today. So the first step is taking the wheels off the front, obviously, and we're going to actually disassemble everything down to the steering knuckle, and then we'll be pretty much where the knuckle is mounted on the ball studs, and then we'll take that off, knock it off with a hammer, and then we'll press out the ball joints and install the new ones, and then reassemble everything. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do, I've already jacked up the vehicle. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take the front wheels off, and I'll begin disassembly of the front axle parts, and I'll bring you back as soon as I'm ready to start getting the knuckle off the vehicle. Okay guys, let me explain where we are right now. We've got the steering knuckle completely disassembled, and what that entails is obviously taking off the wheel, taking off the caliper mounting plate, the rotor, and then undoing these three 13 millimeter 12-point bolts in the back of the hub bearing. You don't have to take the axle nut off. You can if you want to. Doesn't matter. That whole assembly should come out if it's not rusted in this flange right here. That's probably, if you live in a salty area, that's going to be your biggest challenge. The way to do that is somehow get those 13 millimeter bolts backed out, and then tap them from behind. Possibly, if you have one or can borrow one, an air hammer or something to that effect, so you can put some pressure on it to come out, and it should come out. You may have to wrestle with it for a little bit, but depending on how bad the rust jacking is between the steering knuckle and the bearing, that's where you'll have some problems. And certainly when you go to reassemble it, take a wire brush to both surfaces and put plenty of anti-seize in there inside the middle of that sandwich there, and the next time you have to take it apart, you should have no problems. So then after that assembly comes off, we disconnected the steering linkage, and that's fairly simple. And then we hit the knuckle right here. There's like a little tab on the top part here. Keep tapping that with successive blows. Don't go too crazy on it, but show it who the boss is, and it should pop off the ball joint shoulders. One other piece on the YJ is on the bottom. There is actually a split ring that you can see right here, and that split ring, you'll get a new one with the kit. You want to take this out and put the new one in. It gives a nice surface on the inside. And to set the depth, I'll put the dimensions on the screen right here. I don't remember exactly what the dimension is right now, but it's down in there, beyond 1/8 of an inch, but not quite a 1/4 inch. That is specified in the service manual. I'll post that on the screen here, so you'll know exactly how far down to put that in. Now, there is a socket. It's a kind of a 4-prong socket. It's almost like a spanner wrench that you can use to take these in and out. You can possibly also use a pair of pliers or something like that, depending on how rusted. This one's a little bit rusted in there, so this could be a little bit of a fight. Heat it up, use the traditional methods to loosen things up and get that split ring out of there. There is a split in it, so it's more like a little spring tension thing than an actual bolt or something like that. So moving on, I've set up my ball joint press here on the top side. We have the big enough cup to go around and sit on the top of the yoke of the axle. And I have the Jeep OTC cup set, which actually comes with the removal tool, and then it comes also, we'll show you when we go to install it, but you can see this one has a it's offset, has a bevel on it or an angle on it, so it properly fits on the yoke, and I'll show you that when we go to drill one back in there. So we'll go ahead and turn the screw on the press here, and we'll get that going. Okay, I've just taken about 6 or 8 turns on this here, and you can see the ball joint here, this kind of rusty tab on the inside here, and then there's kind of fresh metal underneath. That's the ball joint actually coming out of the top of the yoke. It's going up into the cup, and the bottom of the C-clamp here is pushing on the bottom of the ball joint, and it will literally go ahead and push it right out. Not that big a deal. One thing I should caution you on is make sure you have the orientation of the cup and the pusher correct. You don't want to keep tightening up on something and driving it back in place. You'll do a number of things, not to mention the least of which it won't come out, and you'll probably end up damaging your C-clamp. So let's finish this up, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's out. Okay, the ball joint's out. Came right up out of here like this here. And there's a bunch of old grease on there and stuff. Don't really care about that. This is actually going to get thrown away. I believe it's an original ball joint. So this has about 150,000 miles on it. It still looks in okay condition. I don't, the post is not rolling around or anything like that. And the bore looks good. We will wipe that down, clean it up, and put a slight coat of grease on the inside where the new one will get pressed down. And we'll show you that when we go to reassemble the yoke. The bottom one is very similar. This one pushes out from the bottom, so you want to push on the top here, and it'll come out the bottom. So you want the cup up underneath and the driving screw right on top here. Now let me get that set up and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, on the bottom here we're pressing from the top, and it's going to come to this cup on the bottom. Make sure you have a big enough cup over the bottom so you're not blocking the base of the ball joint from coming out or anything like that, or you're going to be pushing against yourself. You can squirt something in here. You can heat this up a little bit if you like. I don't think mine's too bad. It's actually got a coat of black spray paint from the last time I was in here about 5 years ago. And we're going to go ahead and push that out now and see if we can show it moving here. Let's go nice and easy. And it's by and large going to probably pop at some point. And it's going to fight me a little bit, so I'll be back in a second. Alright, I fought with it a little bit. It wasn't too bad. Came out of here like this here. Just push it right out the bottom. And I don't know if you can't really tell on the camera, but this is very loose. The stud is, I can spin it freely, and it actually will roll back and forth real easy. I think that's the clinky clank I was hearing in the front end. The tire was not tracking that great. Not terrible, but not great. The upper one was actually a lot more stiff than this bottom one. Again, I think these are original. They are not knurled. These are flat, which are fine too, I guess. But we'll be putting in a Moog part, which I think is a bit of an upgrade compared to this one here. So it came out pretty easy. No rust down inside there. You can see that clear metal band. And just in the pocket here, there's a little bit of rust here and there. This vehicle has never been in the salt though, or salt water or anything like that. So if you have a salty vehicle or one that's pretty crusty, you're going to fight a lot more with it. You can still get it out. It'll come out. Just give it some time and take a look at which way you're pushing it in or out, and you may find that you have the clamp on backwards or something like that. I've done it. I think we've probably all done it. So let's get this cleaned up, and we'll press in some new ones. Okay, we've got the upper and lower ball joints pressed in. The lower one goes in first. It's pressed in from the bottom. The upper one is pressed in from the top, and it sits on this ring right here. You can see this is flush with the yoke. We have to take this grease cap off And there's actually a Zerk fitting that goes in the top ball joint as well. These are greasable. They're Moog. Very nice quality, very good knurls to fit in the yoke. Easy press in. Grease them up a little bit. They'll go right in, no problem. Again, you shouldn't have to overforce anything. If you really are having to go down and you know, hit it with everything you got, then double check to make sure you're doing the right direction on the ball joints. It's not that big a deal. It's mostly just a lot of labor kind of pulling everything apart. Again, if you're in the rust belt area, a little bit of heat, a little bit of penetrating oil, a little bit more heat, a little bit of penetrating oil right after the heat will tend to get down in the yoke a little better, and try and break up some of that rust that's probably formed in the bores of the ball joint pockets. On the knuckle gets a new split ring. When this one's in there, it's .206, so a little less than a 1/4 of an inch, and that's measured from the top of the castellated nut side here. Generically speaking, on the back, it's just almost flush with the back of the casting. In case you just want to kind of eyeball it, and you can see it's just a hair, not even a thread width away from the bottom of the casting here. So we'll get this assembled, and we'll go over the torque values for the castle nuts on the ball joints, and I think we'll be in good shape at that point. I'll bring you back when we get that far. Okay, we have the steering knuckle just placed back on there on the ball stud, or the studs of the ball joints. We will now put the nuts on and torque them down to 75 foot-pounds. Okay, we have the steering knuckle installed again on the studs of the ball joints, and those nuts get torqued down to 75 foot-pounds. The tie rod end here is 60 foot-pounds on that nut, and make sure you put the cotter pin back in. That's a critical joint. Not that they're not all critical, but that one is definitely critical. It will, if that nut came off, your tire will go wherever it wants, probably immediately a right-hand turn, and you will lose control. I hope not. So make sure the cotter pin's in there as well and it's torqued down properly. Next, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the axle shaft and the bearing hub. The bearing hub bolts get torqued down to 75 foot-pounds, and then we will put the caliper, or the rotor and the caliper bracket back on, reinstall the caliper, get that all torqued down. I'll put the torque values for those on the screen, and then we'll put our tire back on and we'll be complete. The other side is exactly the same, and the process is exactly the same. You should have no trouble. There's nothing different about it. Double check again when you're pressing in and out the ball joints that you have the directions correctly positioned, and just go over in your mind the forcing screw and which way it's pushing. You should be just fine. Those kits are available from any auto parts store as a loaner. You don't need to invest in one. They're not that expensive either, but if you are going to get one, don't get the Harbor Freight one. It's pretty much junk. The clamp, or the C clamp, will eventually give way, and it's just not worth it. If you're going to spend $65 there, you might as well spend a little bit more and get a good one, like a OTC, or any major name brand one, if you want to add one to your toolkit. Just a little bit of advice there. This, you will notice once you torque it down to 75 foot-pounds, there is a lot. It almost seems like it's too tight. It's not too tight. That's the preload on the ball joints. It's designed that way. It will loosen up a little bit over time, but that is in fact the specification, as long as you have your split ring set to the correct depth, which is 0.206 inches, or just about one thread off the other side of the hole, you'll be just fine. And definitely put the new split ring in there. If you don't, the one that was in there may have been hammered on quite a bit with the old ball joint slipping around or whatever it was doing. So that's why there's a new one in the kit, and go ahead and install that one. So any questions or comments, post them below. If this was helpful for you, consider subscribing. We only have about 3% viewership that are actual subscribers. I'd like some more so we can grow the channel and continue on our Jeep journey together. Thanks for joining Jim's Jeeps today, and we'll see you on the next video.